Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekly reading report. It's time for my weekly reading report, that thrill-packed program where I talk about all the stuff I read last week. And I did read some stuff, Roger. I read some stuff. So, what did I read last week? Let's find out. Let's break out the list for the 500 book challenge. The challenge where I have to read 500 books I own before I will buy any new ones. And when we left off, we were talking about book number 273. I had just started this book, and that was The Lost Oasis, a Doc Savage novel. So this is a Doc Savage novel which was published originally, I think, in September of 1933. Does it say here? Yeah, September 1933. That's when this novel was first published. So I'm reading all the Doc Savage adventures in the order that they were originally published in the 1930s in magazines, in the Doc Savage magazine. And I've been having a great time. And this novel, The Lost Oasis, is probably one of my favorite Doc Savage novels so far. I mean, it's got everything. It's got a lost oasis. It's got a Zeppelin that had gone missing and now has mysteriously returned. A ghost Zeppelin. And it's got evil villains who use vicious giant vampire bats as weapons. It's really, really cool. I really enjoyed this one, The Lost Oasis. And so this was in September of 1933. It's the 7th Doc Savage adventure that was published. And it's interesting because in this novel, Doc Savage goes out of his way to not kill anybody, which was unusual for a pulp hero at the time in the 1930s. But he strives always to injure and never to kill. Which is different than how Doc Savage was when he first appeared in the first couple magazine stories. In those stories, he was killing people left and right. But now he's a kinder, gentler Doc Savage. And so this must have been an editorial decision. Hey, we can't have Doc Savage, our, mighty superhero, killing people right and left. Although this, predates superheroes. He was probably the original superhero, though, Doc Savage. He was certainly greatly influential on both Superman and Batman. It's an awesome character, and this was a lot of fun. Great pulp adventure, The Lost Oasis. And the next adventure I have for Doc Savage, which I'll be reading this month, is the Sargasso Ogre, which has this really cool cover. That was the original cover for the Sargasso Ogre, and that happens to be Lester Dent's, according to this, that happens to be Lester Dent's favorite Doc Savage adventure that he wrote. So it's got to be fantastic. Lester Dent wrote most of the Doc Savage adventures, and he wrote all of the Doc Savage adventures that I've read so far in this project. So yeah, this project's going well. So Doc Savage, I read that. And then the next thing I read was book number 274 on the list. And this is the only other book that I finished this past week. And that was this one. This is Captive Universe by Harry Harrison, which I had never read before and I really didn't know anything about. So I was really looking forward to reading it because I really like Harry Harrison, and I was not disappointed. I really liked this one. Captive Universe by Harry Harrison. I read this for Rocket Summer. This was the final Rocket Summer book for July, but I didn't finish it in July. I finished it a day or two later. But this is the book that was for the 1960s. The last week of Rocket Summer is 1960s. And this one was published at the very end of the 1960s in 1969. And it was really fun. This is a fun book. Harry Harrison tends to write fun science fiction. And it's really interesting. And so it opens up in what seems to be an Aztec village in the past. And there's an attack by an Aztec god. An Aztec god shows up and immediately kills somebody. It's interesting. And then it goes on to some other people in the Aztec village. And at first it seems like it's an historical fantasy at the very beginning of this book. But it turns out to be science fiction. There is a twist. About a third of the way through this book. And it's not a particularly surprising twist. I figured it out fairly early on what was going on in this book. But I wonder, one of the reasons I think I figured it out so quickly is because I had watched a television show from the early 1970s, from almost around the time that this book was published. I think this was broadcast in 1971. It was a television show called The Star Lost, which was not a great television show. Although the initial writer and creator of the series was Harlan Ellison. But he had left the television show because the producers of the show kept changing things and changed his original story. And he wasn't having any of that. So Harlan Ellison left The Star Lost. But The Star Lost kept the basic idea that Harlan Ellison had created. And it's the same basic idea that you find in Captive Universe. So because I had watched that television show, I kind of knew what was going on here. And I just spoiled it for you if you've seen The Star Lost, because it's the same thing going on in this book. However, it's a pretty good book. And a part of that is because of the main character, the rebellious Chimal, who is a young man in this Aztec village. But he doesn't want to just go carry on the way things have always been in this village. He's rebellious, and this village is trapped in a valley, and nobody can get out of this valley. But he wants to find a way out. It's pretty cool. I can't really tell you more than that without spoiling it, although the title, Captive Universe, kind of spoils it. What? What, are you upset that I might have spoiled the book? Oh my goodness, how dare somebody walk by? That was Rhonda, she's insane. Anyway, yes, Captive Universe, excellent book, really enjoyed it. Shut up! Excellent book, Captive Universe. Only other book I finished, I started, though, this other great book, and I started this for Garbogust. It is now August, so Garbogust, CriminOlly's great reading event. And this was sent to me by the Paperback Warrior, who has a YouTube channel and a podcast that is awesome. And this is Weels Ripped My Flesh, which I've shown a couple times now, but I am reading it, and I'm about halfway through, a little over halfway through this book. And it's fantastic. This book is awesome. So this reprints some of the old men's adventure magazines. They were called MAMS. And let me see if I could find another cool cover for you. Yeah, this is good. This is a good one, where we have not weasels, but lizards killing these poor people. So there's a lot of small animals attacking people in the men's adventure magazines. And these magazines were popular from the 1950s up until the early 1970s, I believe. I think they finally died out in the early 1970s. And they were kind of a descendant of the pulp magazines. You know, all the pulp magazines had disappeared. And after World War II, all of these men's adventure magazines showed up. And they were very pulpy and very trashy. So they're very appropriate for Garbogust for sure. But as I've discovered reading this, they're also tremendously entertaining. This is fun stuff, and a lot of it is well-written stuff. I mean, you've got Harlan Ellison writing in here. You've got Robert Silverberg, who has a couple stories in here, and they're just fantastic. Walter Kalin is a writer who's really, really good. Lawrence Block has a story in here, and so this is some good stuff. These magazines disappeared by the 1980s. I think the main audience for these magazines were ex-GIs from World War II, that generation. So my grandfather's generation, who had fought in World War II, came back to the States and were, raising families and living regular lives after the war. And this was, I think, these magazines were definitely targeted to that generation of men. And I'm sure quite a few women as well read these. But I have never read any of this stuff. These magazines disappeared. And the ones that survived, collectors tend to have. But when I was growing up, I never saw these anywhere. I don't know anybody that had them. Even my grandfather, who was, the right age and generation to read these things, never had them. He was busy reading Westerns. But what's interesting, these have a lot of not only small animals eating people, but there are a lot of war stories in here. And they seem a lot like the war stories that my grandfather used to tell me. He was captured by the Japanese in World War II. He was a POW. He escaped a few times and was recaptured. And he told some pretty wild stories. And some of them are very, very similar to some of the stories in this book. He could have written for these magazines, I think. So it's interesting. It's interesting to read this stuff. It's kind of, stories from these lost pulp magazines that are now just gone in the hands of collectors, or now being reprinted in the Men's Adventure Library. And this is an awesome book. I highly recommend it. It's great fun. I'll tell you more about it next week after I finish it, but it's been awesome so far. So I've been reading that. I've also been reading some other things. Still haven't gotten back in comic books to my 1970s horror comic books, because again, another really busy week. I have been reading Superman every day, though. Still reading the Golden Age Superman Volume 3. I'll probably be reading this for a while, since I'm not even really halfway through this book. And where am I in this book right now? I am... Let me see if I could find the cover. Here it is. I had it. Here it is. So this is issue number 19 of Superman. And for once, it's not a World War II cover. There are a lot of World War II covers in this omnibus. So this is Superman number 19. It's tons of fun. Just read that story. I'm on the next story right now. So yeah, it's good stuff. The artwork is really good. It's fun. You're getting more superpowered characters, and you're getting some more science fiction-y stuff show up in the comic book at this time. And of course, that will only increase over the years until the 1950s is just, an awesome science fiction-y world that Superman exists in. But it's cool. These Golden Age stories are really good, and they just keep getting better over time, it seems. Volume 3 is definitely better than Volume 2, which was better than Volume 1. So Superman kept getting better. One thing that hasn't kept getting better, though, is Fantastic Four. So I am reading every issue of the Fantastic Four from the first run of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 1961 till 1996. And I am in 1988 right now. And these are stories written by Steve Englehart. And still crap. Just like the last Epic Collection. So the whole Steve Englehart run, I think, was pretty bad. For several issues now, it's been the Fantastic Three, because, not only Mr. Fantastic and The Invisible Woman, they're both out of the book. Englehart wrote them out, stupidly. And so they were replaced by a female thing, the She-Thing, and Crystal from the Inhumans. But Crystal left and went back to the Inhumans. So now the Fantastic Four are just two things and the Human Torch. And it's lame. And the stories aren't even all that good. Probably better than some of the stories in the last Epic collection, but still not great. But at this point, Steve Englehart was all pissed off because the editor at this time, Tom DeFalco, had ordered him to bring back the Invisible Woman and Mr. Fantastic, which he did not want to do. And so in this issue, the next issue I have to read is 326, and it looks like Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman are coming back in this issue. And because he was so pissed, he used the pseudonym John Harkness for the rest of his run, because he didn't want to put his name on these stories that he didn't want to write. And so this has the rest of John Harkness's run before mercifully he left the book. And to be fair, I haven't read all of these issues. Maybe it gets better. But I suspect it's not really going to get better until Mr. Harkness leaves the book for good. And then I hear it gets a lot better, Fantastic Four. And so this is the only period in the Fantastic Four so far that's really just been bad. Everything up to this point in the late 80s has been pretty good to great. So I can't complain too much. Like I said, I hear it gets better after this run. So I'll keep reading. And that was it, actually. That was it, Roger. You know, it's been a busy week, lots of stuff going on. So I haven't read nearly as much as I'd like. As usual, it's pretty much always that way. And it looks like it's going to be that way the rest of August. I do have some time off in September, which is great because it coincides with Samaria in September, an event I will be talking about very soon on this channel on the next Robert E. Howard show, which I hope I'll get up by Friday. I'm hoping. And so I'm hoping I catch you then. Oh, but of course, Epic Comic Book Wednesday, Roger. You got to catch Epic Comic Book Wednesday. It's going to be extra epic this week with Romp Space Knight. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.